right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to people in the gallery. And just want to say Happy New Year. It's good to see you all again. And today we have an alternate director sitting in, alternate director Wells sitting in for Director Moran. And sorry, Director McCullen, sorry. Got a bit of a cold, my head's still waking up. But and I want to begin, as always, by acknowledging that we're gathering today on the traditional unceded territories of the Comox First Nations, the traditional keepers of this land. And as always, we read one of the calls to action, call to action number 39. We call upon the federal government to develop a national plan to collect and publish data on the criminal victimization of Aboriginal people, including data related to homicide and family violence victimization. And we'll start off. We have a motion for an in-camera meeting. Anyone wants to move that? And that's sections 91K and 92B. And all those in favor? Thanks. Any opposed? And that passes. Next is a motion for adoption of minutes. Any questions or discussion on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And next is petitions and delegations. And I'd like to welcome the delegation from the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition. You have 10 minutes and welcome. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. I'm Mike Cohane with the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition. As you can see, we have a good support from board members and members of the Cycling Coalition. Tonight, we want to just talk to you very quickly about a trail initiative that we've come up with. And if we have time at the end, we'll give you an update on some of the other projects we're working on that are relative to the regional district. The biggest thing we want to ask for is some consideration for directing use of some of the 600,000 grant funds from the Island Corridor Grant. We have been talking with staff about this and we didn't want to preempt them, but I had some time limitations. This was the only meeting I could make. So apologies for the early jumping ahead. We had a couple of meetings last fall that we attended, one with Trans-Canada Trails, that a lot of the people in the room here, a lot of directors attended as well as a strategy meeting with the new CVRD Parks and Greenways Committee, and really came away excited from both those meetings about the trail potential in the Comox Valley. Huge trail potential, lots of utility and railway and logging road corridors that are underused or unused, and we see some big potential. Priorities that we look at when we're looking at for trails, obviously, if we can utilize an existing right-of-way, that's number one, save some money and doesn't cut into the real estate that we need for other things like housing and roads and such. As well, one of the big things we look at is if we can identify something that's both a commuter and a recreational potential. And people can connect on the trail with nature, but they can also go shopping, go to school, go to work, whatever they need to do. Those are big things we look at. And we also like to see them, of course, align with other municipal plans, as well as with reconciliation with the Comox First Nations. And one trail potential that we kept coming up to the top of the pack was extending the Rotary Trail, the rail trail, from 29th Street down to the Trent River Trestle. And in looking at that, it's about 5 kilometers long. It connects not just Royston and the Ridge and Courtenay and even up into Cumberland through the Cumberland Rail Trail as communities, but it also has an elementary school, nature park, Millard Nature Park, and access to many other trails like the Royston Seaside Trail, the Courtenay Riverway Trail, and the Royston Rail Trail. Cumberland Rail Trail, as well as commercial ties. The Enfield Center with Walmart, etc., and Driftwood Mall are right at the end of that. And downtown Courtenay isn't that far away, as you can see from the note on the end of the next slide. It's about 10 minutes from Royston Elementary to Walmart, and only about another 10 to get downtown to right out to the corner here of Fitzgerald and Cumberland. This is would be a direct route with a high level of user comfort. Right now, there's a bit of a zigzag route using the Royston Seaside Trail and the Highway 19A to get onto the Riverway Trail and then back to wherever you need to go. But this would be a direct and comfortable route for all users. There are some challenges, as we all know. One of the biggest ones being crossing at 29th Street. And our friends at Modi, I'm sure, will have lots of information around that. Two significant watershed crossings in here, both fish-bearing Millard Creek and Roy Creek, and we've talked to both watershed groups who are in favor of a trail. So what we wanted to look at is what do we know now and what do we need to know? And the big thing we want to look at is let's get as much of what we need to know in and maybe even use some of this grant money to do so. Right now, we know that the SNANA's decision came in and there's moving towards the return of First Nation lands. And rail is, the idea of rail is diminishing as time goes on. The positive out of that decision was the grant money that was given to all the RDs and the First Nations to look at what opportunities there are for alternate uses for the rail corridor. And we found a couple of great studies, both from 2009, one done for the CVRD by Lanark Consulting out in Nanaimo and Newcastle Engineering that did a rail beside trail feasibility study. They did one in the regional district in Nanaimo same year. Great study. As well as ICF came up with a very comprehensive design guideline that same year for putting trail beside rail, if that's going to be the case. When you look at the 2009 Lanark report, it does raise some challenges. 26% of the corridor, because of topography and mostly waterways, is not viable for a trail beside the rail. It would have to go out to 19A or other smaller bypass roads if they're available. As you can see from the little table at the bottom, the percentage of the route that's either rated as difficult or moderate for clearing drainage and subgrade prep is pretty high. So if you can't put a trail beside the rail, what about putting it on the rail bed? And that's what this opportunity might speak to, is we know it's lower cost. It's about a third of the cost based on the estimates we've shown here. And right now it would limit us, though, just to go to the Trent River Trestle. You can see from that beautiful picture that unless you utilize that bridge to get across, which we're not sure if that is something that ICF or users want at this point in time. Costs are compared to the North Okanagan Shuswap Trail, and as you can see, they're about a third. If you go beside the rail bed, you obviously require new bridges over waterways. It requires a lot of clearing. It's about 10 acres of trees to take out just in that 5 kilometers that would need to come out to put that in. Plus it would need 2 bridges across Millard and Roy Creeks, which could be challenging. So what do we need to know? What do we think could help us along this way? Well, the first thing is we don't really know what the discontinuation process is. This is not a federally regulated railway. It's provincially regulated. And about 20 years ago, the BC government pulled the discontinuation aspects out of their BC Railway Act. So there's no cut and dry, this is what happens anymore. So that needs to be worked on with the government as to what's the notification process, what are the environmental issues and the assessments that need to be done. Is there an option for rail banking? How and when do the rails and the ties come up? Those types of things, if that is to be the case. Second thing we'd like to see some attention given to is just copy what ICF did with their trail beside rail document and build one for trail on rail. It's a wonderful document. It talks about crossings and subgrades and slopes. Would be a wonderful document to have. Third thing is, how do you utilize the bridges? How do you put decking? How do you put railings on there? Can you use them for utility crossings, which could be an interesting concept, especially if you look at number 4 here. What's the feasibility of running, especially something like the South Sewer Line that's going to cause a major traffic headache on 19A if it goes down there? Could be lower cost, I would assume, as well, rather than disrupting the highway. So those are the 4 items that we see where we could get some additional information that would be really helpful between now and the end of the year in helping decide if we can actually put a trail on the rail. And I think this 5 kilometers would be an incredibly good test case for building trail on rail elsewhere along the corridor. In addition to the 600,000 of funding that is to go for the studies, and we understand these studies have to be something that's relevant all along the corridor. There's lots of money that we can see in addition to provincial and federal grant monies to build these things. There's the 412,000 that was committed to ICF about 10 years ago. If that has not been allocated as yet, TransCanada Trails says they supply up to 35% of capital costs for eligible trails. And we also see the ICF could leverage their charitable factor a lot better and really look at private service club and corporate donations for trail construction along the rail corridor. Just quickly, I'll give you, I've got 47 seconds, give you a quick update. Thank you very much for the grant we received about a year ago for our cycle route mapping update. It hasn't been done since 2016. That's in progress. We'll have those maps out and ready to go this spring if all goes according to plan. So online and print versions. Traffic management for the sewer conveyance project on the other side of the estuary. We are attending and helping out to try and get people to shift modes out of a car with all this work that's going on. So we've been asked to attend the whole open houses in January, and we're going to do so. Try and support that effort, as well as providing maps along the project that will show alternate routes. We also had a great meeting with Evolve on the bike sharing project, and we continue to work with staff, and again, a great relationship with staff. Cumberland Connector is the next one that's coming up. Wow.
Great, thanks, Mike. Appreciate, as always, the coalition's involvement in the community and update on some of the work that's being done. I'm just going to open things up for questions or comments at this point. Alternate Director Wells, just a second.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think it was it last summer or maybe a year ago or so, we had a discussion around another route that kind of went adjacent, kind of past the visitor center and down and then across to Cumberland Road. And I just wondered if that's something that's still being looked at.
Absolutely. Oh, there we go. Absolutely is the bottom one on there that talks about the Cumberland Connector. It's still part of the CVRD active transportation plan. I believe that's kicking off in the next month or two.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm an alternate director, so I'm
no worries.
Little shy on some of the details. Thanks so much.
And Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the presentation and obviously all the different initiatives that are happening with the Cycling Coalition. And I'm sorry that in our allocation in December, we didn't actually put some funding towards the Cumberland Connector. I guess the board, we identified different priorities, but I realized this was an opportunity to jumpstart that project a little bit, and we didn't quite pull the trigger on that one. In terms of the Island Corridor, I appreciate your engagement and in thinking about the future, and it might be a question of pacing. I might adjust the language a little bit in the sense of the funding we're receiving is not purely for alternative uses. It could be still for rail. In fact, some of our neighboring regions like Alberni, everybody is still very gung-ho about rail over there. So we've had one meeting so far for each of the 4 regions, and the next one is in February. And you're right that concurrently our staff is trying to gear up around the different ways we could spend that money. And I think the message we had that initial meeting with, we had Councillor McKay from Comox First Nation, and we had Chief Rakalma from Qualicum, and the folks from Alberni. And I think there's interest in just looking at a range of options. And in that sense, I think what you're saying is if we can carve out a little bit of thinking around that active transportation on the rail, I'm very supportive of that. I would just encourage a bit of patience for me when I was setting in my mind with the active transportation plan. I thought we'd spend the coming year focusing on the Cumberland to Courtney connector, and then waiting for finishing the ICF process with the province that will conclude at the end of this coming year. But in the meantime, we could do some background study as you've identified. But to arrive at a decision point like lifting rail or all that, like the ICF is quite still a ways away from looking at that level, and so is the province. So lots of enthusiasm. Obviously, I represent Area A. I think long term, with the expected development with Comox and Union Bay Estates and the rest of that, we're going to need lots of ways for people to connect well into Courtney, and the less people are car dependent, the better. Right now, we're entirely car dependent. So I really appreciate that you brought this forward today, and I hope staff will be able to pick it up and integrate it into their work plan.
Thanks, Director Arbor. And next we have Director Morin.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of questions. One of them is for staff, and that's around the 29th crossing. I know that's a Modi jurisdiction, but I guess I don't have all the history on whether there's been any proposals around having some kind of crossing there, how difficult it is, whether that's sort of a as opposed to just a physical barrier, but just a barrier in a sense to extending the trail. So that's one question I have for staff. I know I find that crossing extremely frustrating because I'm not like an extra confident cyclist. So I tend to take the really long route to get across there. The other piece, I guess, which is more for you folks, is around gathering information around mode shift. And I know we've had some kind of key times over the last few years where we've anecdotally, seen mode shift during COVID, obviously, and we saw, an uptake of e-bikes, et cetera. But I guess I'm wondering what data we have that takes a really good look at what behavior change we're seeing or on that. So I guess that's more a question for you folks, and then maybe staff could answer the other question after, if that's okay. Thanks.
As far as mode shift, we did some counts at some of the major intersections in town back in 2019, including Fifth Street Bridge, Fitzgerald, 17th Street. We'd be happy to look at organizing those again. A lot of jurisdictions are moving towards a more holistic data, more expensive data, using processes such as applications such as Streetlight, it's called, and they anonymously track all the cell phone travel in an area or through town, and can figure out who's walking, who's on a bike, where they're going to, where they're coming from. So it gives you a lot more detail, but we'd be happy to talk about that. We're working on a program right now. We're meeting with SD71. We're going to monitor how many bikes are coming to school, to each and every of the schools through the years, see how that's done. We've also had a bit of a shift in how we do our marketing for mode shift. A lot of the mode shift has been supported by environmental and climate change concerns. But the big thing that gets everybody, and we're seeing that obviously this year and last year, is inflation and cost. And economics is a huge driver. I talked to a young guy who works up at North Island College and lives between Royston and Union Bay. He bought an e-bike and paid for it with less fuel use in 4 months going to and from work. So things like that, we're trying to use more and more to promote mode shift, but we'd be happy to work with any of the jurisdictions to help track where we think it's working and where it isn't working.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to get a bit more accurate view. I mean, I think just tapping into more of that qualitative information as well, because I mean, I'm actually not the oldest person. I see cycling quite often, so there's a lot. I've seen way more seniors cycling in the last couple years than ever. And just how do we get that information to find out, even if it is recreational to start, I think people do tend to, with a e-bike in particular, they do tend to start to shift to short errands and stuff like that. Yeah, and then if it's possible, Chair, just to have staff answer the question about the 29th crossing and what that entails and sort of the history. Thanks.
Thanks. And Director Moore, to answer your question, and Doug DeMarzo, our General Manager of Community Services, might have more to add with respect to the previous study work that goes back several years now. But the 29th crossing, that's not something the CBRD has had jurisdiction on, and it isn't something that we've put a lot of consideration into at this time. So, but Doug, I do know there's been some historic work done on the corridor. Whether you've got anything more to add that would help answer that. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you've got something more to add. You can go ahead.
You just add quickly that we're obviously crossing Modi jurisdiction there of the major highway being 4 lanes. So there's 2 things to consider: is the requirements of permits through Modi, which would be, I think, challenging. There's also, when you're looking at railway trail crossings, there's different grades and sight lines that need to be considered. And I think that's an approaching hill coming up to that grade, if I remember correctly. So I would say, not having the information in front of me, that would be a very challenging crossing to work through and get permits for. That being said, there is ways to divert alternative routing to use existing pedestrian lights or otherwise. Just down from there, I think there's one on, I can't remember the name of the road, but basically across from Canadian Tire. So that might be the most advantageous starting point, and then work through the permitting process for the rest. So in short, with a short alternative crossing, it would be able to see the continuation of that trail in the Modi Road right away, with maybe 2 separate bike lanes on each side, east, north, and south of the parkway, to allow for that alternative crossing and then back up and down onto the trail.
Thanks. Can I just have a quick poll? Yeah, and I know there is a crossing further down. If you're cycling, you have to walk your bike down to that crossing. So it is, it's not like I mean, that's what I tend to do, but it's, you walk down and then you cross and then you walk back up if you're coming from downtown Courtenay. So anyway, it doesn't sound like there's a ton of prospects there, but certainly is something to consider. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Director Moore, and useful staff, and Director Arbor.
Well, I do want to give Director Morris some hope in the sense that one of the things that have been partaking in all the different meetings up and down the island and in Victoria, I mean, what we're dealing with is we're in that space of what will be the highest public use for the corridor and or uses. And of course, in different regions, people are talking about, if there is no train, what does that look like? And I know in the capital in CRD, for one section, there's already consideration around adjusting design if there is no immediate train running or anything like that. So we're not quite there yet, but depending on the outcomes of the process, you might ask a question again in a year or 2.
Okay, and see Director Alien.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for the presentation and your ongoing work. And I do note that the Dingwall steps have just opened, and there's actually a cycle track up and down that hill that people were marveling at when I was over there today. But I did want to ask about how we determine and what the time frame is for where we're going with this. I appreciate Director Arbor's comments about the need for patience and letting the process unfold. I don't think at this board table, we have a really clear idea of what the decision-making process actually is. And we're not going to make any decisions on this presentation today, but maybe as a follow-up to it, that is what we need from staff is some indication of what our process will be for making any type of decision, because my understanding right now is that even if this board voted in favor to endorse this proposal, we really don't have any means or jurisdiction to go ahead with it. So I think it would be helpful to know what the time frame is and what sort of process we can expect. Thanks.
Thanks, Director. So as the delegation mentioned, they are a little bit premature in this presentation because staff do have a report that we're planning to bring to the board in the next couple of meetings that would speak to the contribution that we've received from the island, from Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure around this rail corridor project and the $600,000 that was provided. We will be presenting some considerations for how to undertake some analysis and define some opportunities. We're not looking to rule any particular project or interest either in or out. We're just trying to be able to identify what are the pros and cons and what are the options that would be available to the board. We're also very acutely aware of Comox First Nation is also part of this overall corridor visioning process, and so we're working with Comox to make sure that there's alignment there in terms of process and interests. And I will say we're quite fortunate to have Director Arbor sitting here at the board level, but he's also co-chair of the Island Corridor Foundation. So he provides a lot of insight to the Island Corridor Foundation's approach and activities. So short answer, in the next couple of meetings, we will have a report that will speak to that financial contribution and staff's proposal to advance that work.
Good to know. And Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. It's a good point from Director Hillian. And I would say, if you look at just the status quo from a CVRD board perspective, this project between here and Royston was identified in our active transportation plan, our strategy, but it's identified in the medium term, like 10 years plus kind of deal. So there's been changes in the last year. And then the other thing that I think Mike brought up is we are doing the regional parks and trails strategy, and that's also in process. So you can see how a project like that is caught between, well, with the active transportation plan, we would have to amend it if this board was going to say we want to prioritize this over the Cumberland to Courtney Trail. We would have, in my opinion, to go back to that plan and reprioritize. But with the other ones, it's a bit of a, with the ICF and with the regional parks and trails, that's why I agree we should do some investigation, but I wouldn't predetermine the outcome of that in the coming year.
All right. And Director Carr, anything from you online? All good. Perfect. So seeing no further questions, thanks, Mike, and to the rest of the coalition.
Thank you very much, as always, for your support for active transportation.
I turn that far, isn't it? I'm a tech guy, apparently. You can help with that. Yeah. All right, so moving on, we're going to head into reports. And the first is a report from staff on an ABICC resolution on behalf of the Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital Board regarding grants to named health facilities. And I'll just pass that over to our CEO. Thank you. After a motion for a scene.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I think this is a pretty self-explanatory, very short report. The Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital District had expressed interest in submitting a resolution to the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities to request that the Ministry of Health consider that review of the Hospital District Act around providing funds to not-for-profit community health clinics and centers in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. It turns out that the AVICC requires members to actually make that submission, and the hospital board is not a member, as it turns out. So therefore, the staff report here is suggesting that the CVRD submit that resolution on behalf of the hospital district. I believe maybe that Strathcona Regional District is also taking a similar approach, or they were advised of the limitation here, I guess, on the hospital board. So That's it.
Great.
Yeah.
The resolution is up on the screen there. And are there any questions or discussion on the resolution? Okay, well, we'll dispense with receipt then. Any opposed to receipt? Seeing none, and someone to move the recommended. Okay, it's Hillian and Grieve Grant, like tied by a nose. All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, we're voting on the recommendation. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. All right, next for receipt, we have another ABICC resolution regarding development cost charges for affordable housing. Can I get a motion for receipt?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and I'll pass that over to staff.
Thanks very much. And Mark Rutten, General Manager of Engineering Services, will be introducing this report.
Thank you. Through the CEO and through the chair, I just have a very short introduction here. At their meetings in November, the Water Committee and the Sewage Commission approved resolutions requesting that the provincial and federal governments consider the full cost, including development cost charges in any grant funding for affordable housing. In addition, the Water Committee added a second resolution to direct staff to include the above in a resolution for referral to ABICC. In the meantime, staff have confirmed that DCCs are an eligible capital cost for supportive housing projects. And so staff have developed a draft ABICC resolution for the board's consideration. And that's included in the staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, so the draft resolution is up on the screen as well as in the staff report. Are there any questions, Director Grant?
I thought Doug was up first. That's okay. No, I'm just wondering with the new provincial guidelines for housing and OCPs and the fact that we can add DCCs and ACCs for all sorts of different projects, if that's going to affect this in any way. I'm just not sure where we're going with all of that yet. And so I don't want the two to get confused with one another. So I'm not sure. It concerns me a little bit with DCCs that we can just add them on. And then the price of housing goes up when in fact we're trying to make it go down. So I don't know if this has anything to do with that or not, but just a thought that I have.
Yeah, I can see a line of standing, but I'll try. You know, this particular resolution is not changing the DCC requirement. It's not adding them or taking them away or increasing them in any way. It's just encouraging higher levels of government to, as they support affordable housing projects, to include the cost of DCCs so that the proponents that are building these projects aren't looking to, for waivers or looking for ways to fund those, that they're included in the project from the beginning as part of the funding package.
Thanks, Mark. And that's certainly commentary that's come up around the table many times when we've been requested. Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I do think it's worth taking this to ABICC and further to UBCM to have the discussion take place. My concern obviously is that first of all, the province won't do anything about it. And secondly, that if they do something about it and actually embed funding for DCCs, that it won't necessarily stop local housing projects from coming to local government looking for support. Either way, I expect that we're going to have a continuation of projects that are stuck for some time, and I wouldn't foresee us having this resolution get us out of the dilemma of how we respond to groups that may come forward looking for relief from DCCs in the meantime. So as I said, I think it's still worth taking it forward to have the discussion at the provincial level. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Director Hillian, and next to Director Harper.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks staff for putting this together. I think it's not only a local or provincial conversation, but very much a national one. We're seeing communities across the country struggle with this very topic. And in fact, talking about with some of the other trends in housing around asking for more densification and the rest of that. And the question of DCC is coming up right, left, and center, Ontario, Quebec. So I was just appointed last summer as the chair of the socio-economic committee, which oversees housing. And I think this, if the board is amenable, I would say that we forward this to FCM as well, this resolution for consideration by their committee. And what happens when you send it to FCM is you're going to get a bunch of feedback from FCM staff that will look at that broader national perspective, because a lot of the housing program we see, BC is driving the boat in many ways, but a lot of the federal housing funds are also have some strings attached around them, and I think we should try to get a look at that through this resolution. So if the board's amenable, I would just ask that we also send it to FCM as a standalone resolution.
It's a great suggestion, Director Arbor. Yep. And when we get to moving the recommendation, that's something to consider. Alternate Director Wells. Perfect. Okay, so we have a motion for receipt on the table, and we can just dispense with that. Any opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that passes unanimously, and then the recommendation itself. Yeah, I was assuming that.
Could I just ask
Yeah.
a question? I don't have a lot of experience submitting resolutions to FCM, so would this be better to be a second resolution that is custom to FCM, because this is very clearly directed to UBCM, to BC Housing?
We did that with 2 years ago with the ship breaking resolution, and we ended up producing a single resolution that touched on all three, AVICC, the province, and the federal, because there were aspects. I think you're right, there was an additional paragraph, but maybe all I would suggest as an amendment, and therefore be it resolved after the therefore be it resolved paragraph, and therefore be it resolved that this resolution be forwarded to FCM for consideration.
Okay.
Second that.
Okay, that was seconded by Hillian, so Arbor and Hillian. So I don't know if Lisa, do you want to put that up on the screen just, or it's everyone, I think, probably is clear on what's being proposed here. Okay. Thank you. Okay, there you go. So very minimal, but that's the amendment that's proposed. And so we'll, seeing no further lights on for discussion, those in favor of the resolution as amended? Any opposed? Okay, that passed unanimously, and thanks for that addition. That was really helpful. Good work. And so we're now moving on to the Electoral Areas Service Committee, January 8th. There are two recommendations coming from that. The first is regarding, sorry, just flipping to the next page. The 15-meter site-specific building setback for proposed accessory building relative to the 2100-year floodplain standard, bylaw number 670, and further text. So that's the recommendation, and anyone wants to move or comment on it. Director Grieve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe staff can help me here. Is this not the hot water tank issue? No? Okay. So that's so it shouldn't even be before us.
I'm sorry, Director?
Should it be before us right now?
Yeah, this was the recommendation that the Electoral Area Services Committee approved yesterday.
Approved.
You approved this resolution to deny the application.
This is a recommendation. The words "be denied" are in the third line there. So it's a recommendation that it be denied. And I understand the CAO saying that's consistent with yesterday's CASC. So, Director Arbor, do you?
I think that the chair is correct and staff as well, that I think this is just coming for ratification of our ESC decision to deny the application, which is what we did yesterday. I was too confused when I saw it because I thought we were only bringing the ones that we've approved, but through our process, we also need to ratify those that get denied.
So this, just for the board's information, was basically a studio, an art studio that was going to be built, and even though it was engineered and it seemed to be, something that fit for a creative space, it was recommended that it would be denied. But when we sent it out to Area A's advisory panel, they looked at it and realized that if it didn't have a hot water tank, it didn't need approval. So it looks like it's going to go, correct me if I'm wrong here, I must have been, but it looks to me like we're just following through with what staff, recommended according to our bylaws as they exist today. But taking a hot water tank out of the building basically removes it for any possibility of being a dwelling. So as such, the proponent can move ahead with the construction after a year of delay. So, okay, so I was just confused. I didn't think it would even come before us anymore, but just basically reaffirming staff's position on this. Am I correct, Mr. CAO?
More or less, I think, yes. The recommendation from staff was to deny this particular application, and then it did get referred to the Advisory Planning Commission in December. The Advisory Planning Commission did not recommend supporting the application as well, and so the committee yesterday debated on whether to support the staff recommendation, which would deny the application, or authorize an exemption to the floodplain bylaw. And at the end of the meeting, the committee did approve the recommendation, which was to deny the application.
Okay. Basically, we approved the denial, but he's going to go forward.
All right, sounds like we're all largely clear on this, and so I had another meeting, but it's my practice to attend them where possible. I had 2 meetings yesterday, unfortunately. All right, so there's a vote of the areas, A, B, and C. So all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Move 2. And this is regarding development variance permit and setbacks for property on Oland Road. This is also a vote of the areas. So it was moved by Grieve. Sorry, who seconded that? Perfect. Any discussion on that? All right, and all those in favor? And that passes unanimously as well. Now we'll move into bylaws and resolutions for first and second reading. There's a recommendation there for bylaw number 813, rural Comox Valley zoning bylaw number 520, regarding Roy Creek Farm on Minto Road. Someone cares to move that?
Move first and second.
Oh,
Second.
okay. Moved and seconded. This is also a vote of the areas. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. And now we're going to move on to first, second, and third readings. Does someone want to move the recommendation? Okay, first and seconded, and this is for bylaw number 815. It's got development cost charges bylaw amendment number 2. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? So vote of the areas once again. That's okay. Move third, and this is the same, and this is also a weighted vote of the areas. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Sorry, was it just the areas A, B, and C or all?
Sorry, I thought I said the areas. My apologies. So it's A, B, and C, and it's a weighted vote. Yes, just the areas. All right. So
we're talking about recommendation number 3 for bylaw number 799.
No, we're talking about the third reading for.
Sorry, third reading.
Yeah. Okay, great. Always good to clarify these things. All those in favor? A, B, and C. And that passes unanimously. So this is for final adoption. This is a vote of all members of the board. And this is bylaw number 709, the Union Bay Water Service Parcel Tax Bylaw. Moved by Grieve, moved by Grant, seconded by Grieve. So any discussion on this? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's finally adopted. And the next one, bylaw number 801. Thank you. It's moved and seconded. That's the Comox Valley Water Local Service Area Parcel Tax Bylaw 2001, amendment number 3. And I see in terms of comments, the Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Not specific to this recommendation, but I thought that last year we were looking into the possibility that these things, once they were passed at the Area Services Committee, wouldn't need to come to the board. Did we ever have any resolution of that process?
We did, and there's a fair bit of delegated authority now given to the Electric Services Committee, and so you don't see nearly as many resolutions coming to this board. However, the readings on bylaws is not something that can be delegated. And so those decisions do still need to come to the board, as well as some of the planning matters. Just given the legislative requirements, we want to ensure that the board itself is still approving those. So while there's lots of items on here that are rural based, there's less than there has been in the past.
Thanks for the clarification. I guess I hadn't noticed the reduced volume.
That's a pretty fair comment. So this is a weighted vote of the areas only. Any further comments before we vote? All right, all those in favor? Director Arbor. Sorry, did you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I thought I would say more earnestly that it's still the liability of this board, all of those decisions. So even though it may not be your jurisdiction, I get to vote on things that are not my own as well. And then I think it's our corporate duty as officers to go through them.
All right, and we'll move on. Recommendation number 5, moved by Grieve, seconded by Morin. And that's for adoption. That's the Royston Water Service Parcel Tax Bylaw 2010 Amendment number 1. Yeah, and this is all okay. All right. Any comments, questions? Yeah, and it's a vote of all. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Excellent. We'll move on to recommendation number 6. This is for bylaw 804. Moved by Grieve, seconded by Grant. That's the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Local Service Area Parcel Tax Bylaw bylaw 2009, amendment number 2 be adopted. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? That passed unanimously. On to 7, this is the Grand Lake Water Service Parcel Tax Bylaw number 807. Moved by Wells, seconded by Grant. And it's a vote of all directors and Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll underscore this one. Again, I think the last few months heading into budget, I was still looking for ways to identify more grants and see if there was regional support for allocating some of the funds that we receive that were regional in nature. But we're still facing, I just still want to acknowledge, because I still get a lot of correspondence from residents there, that we're still sitting at about $3,500 for water a year per home. So just so that this board is aware that this issue in my book is still unresolved. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. And so that's on the table. So all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, and we're now moving on to recommendation number 8, the Water Tolls Bylaw number 2023, number 100, amendment number 2 regarding Grand Lake. I don't think we're doing receipt, but definitely adoption. All right, and that's been moved and seconded. Any comment on that? And all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, and the last recommendation, number 9, Devon Island Water Regulation and Rates Bylaw 1997, amendment number 8. We're currently on recommendation 9, which is bylaw number 809. Yeah, it's another adoption piece. So kind of lost our stride over that brief break, but we're making it through with the help of our staff. So this is adoption. This is a vote of all directors. And any comments or questions before we vote? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that also passes unanimously. And now we're going to move on to new business. And this is a grant funding letter of support put forward by the town of Comox. I'll maybe just pass that over to staff to. Thank you. Receipt moved and seconded.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, staff don't have a lot more to add than what you see in the correspondence. Perhaps one of the town of Comox councilors or directors might want to weigh in on this, but I think the request is pretty straightforward to provide that letter of support for the town's grant application with respect to the comprehensive community broadband strategy.
Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to Comox for sending this along and seeking regional support. And I did read in the proposal that there's references to regional benefits. And that got me thinking about the pockets that are left in the adjacent areas, whether it be Area B or towards Merville, that are also in dire need of it, comprehensive broadband strategy. So when I read that the proposal was saying it will bring regional benefits, I still didn't see an aspect that was going to explore broadband for peripheral areas. And so for me, I don't want to shut this down because this is a good concept and good idea for the residents of Comox. But I'm wondering if we could have staff ask staff of Comox whether they would be amenable if this came back to the ASC committee to look at the potential to explore improving broadband in the peri-urban areas around Comox and moving up the coast.
Certainly we can pose the question and ask for some feedback from town of Comox staff and then just have to understand what that means in terms of what sort of analysis and study work might be included.
Okay, great. And alternate Director Wells.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I fully support what Director Arbor's talking to. Several years ago, the city of Campbell River did some broadband work. But the cost of doing that was pretty extensive. And when you look at the town from a geeky perspective, pretty much every house has multi-gigabit accessibility. Whereas if you even go a little bit outside of the area into some of these areas like A, B, and C, you might be lucky to get cell phone reception or have to get satellite services to get internet. So I certainly see the need far more in some of these more rural areas than I do in the town or the city and the village as well. But I mean, that's from a technical perspective, but I think making sure that that the areas that I think really do need to have that boost in broadband connectivity are included in this broadband strategy.
Director Grieve.
Over here. She had it up.
Oh, sorry. Director Moore, then my apologies.
Yeah, I just note that in the letter, it does say within our municipal boundary and regionally, so maybe it's just a matter of, I mean, that sounds like it does cover the entire region? No.
No, my understanding is this is a broadband strategy that would be developed for the town of Comox. I think they're indicating there might be some benefit to some rural improvement, but I don't think the study work that they're anticipating would
Okay.
go beyond the town of Comox.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
Director Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, suppose we don't muddy the waters for the town of Comox, and it is a nice tea request. Maybe we could support it as requested action, but you know, on the aside, perhaps we could under new business, which we are under, or else refer it back to Electoral Area Services Committee for discussion in regards to things like the Merville landfall for the Connect the Coast cable and things like that. And just an inquiry to staff from the Electoral Area Services Committee standpoint of where we are actually at for further connectivity in rural areas. You know, rather than trying to piggyback on the town of Comox, just my thought.
The staff have any suggestions on the most effective way of addressing this? I assume it being new business, we can simply approve this and then you can bring that up later. All right. Seeing no commentary on which is the better methodology, then.
Yeah, I think to respond to the town of Comox's request is probably just as easy to support that if that's the will of the board. In terms of connectivity in the rural areas, the only service that we actually have with respect to connectivity is on Denman and Hornby Islands, and it's that contribution service towards the last mile fiber. That is the partnership with City West, and relied on, I think, 90% grant funding to be able to achieve that after the extensive work of the community putting together the broadband strategy for the islands. So there is no other service in the rural areas that looks at broadband connectivity. That would be a new activity for the CVRD to undertake.
All right, thanks, CAO. And we're still on the discussion of the letter for Comox, and I see alternate Director Wells.
Yeah, I'm probably just getting less excited about the support of this, like just looking at because there's already quite a lot of services that provide broadband in the town of Comox. And I realize that using the opportunity while they're digging up their ground to stick some fiber in there is certainly a great idea. But just like, and in my mind, I was like, well, yeah, as long as that's coordinated with the local areas, so we can support that. But if there's not really a service for it, I don't know how that coordination can really be attained in some kind of meaningful way. That's my only concern around it. But I mean, to support them for the request, I guess, but just having a hard time wrapping my head around what the end result is.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Director Kerr has perhaps some response to that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And yeah, it's a good question. I think really this is about developing a strategy. I think, okay, great, we're going to have the roads ripped up, a new conduit put through, the possibility for broadband, but I think we're not 100% sure what that could mean for the town and I guess regionally as well. So with some ICE-T funding to do that analysis and develop that broadband strategy, we're going to have hopefully some of those answers. So yes, I don't think staff or we know what the outcome might be, but this is hopefully to get some of that ICE-T funding to develop a strategy and hopefully we can support this.
All right, thanks, Director Kerr. So this is still on the table, and Director Armour.
Just a question to either of the Comox directors, whether and I'm sorry, maybe it is in the document or maybe it's staff, but do we know when the deadline is, or is this kind of a rolling deadline on this funding to apply?
The correspondence says the submissions deadline is February 8th.
Okay, so we could have, well, no, we don't have enough time. Okay, no, I mean, I'm willing to support it, but I think I agree with Dr. Grieve. I think on our side, knowing that Comox is going to pursue this, knowing that some of the roads and the direction of the infrastructure is heading into Area B, knowing that there is a landing site on the horizon for Merville, that could connect and swoop back towards the airport and Little River and all that. I think we should have further consideration at ESC. So I'll still provide the support today, but I'm hoping for more conversation between the town of Comox and ourselves.
Great, thanks. And I think that's the what Director Grief's proposed resolution contemplates, and Director Grant.
Yeah, I think that we're not 100% sure where we're going with this either. And the whole idea is to have to put a comprehensive strategy together, which may or may not include all of the things that you're talking about. We don't know until we do the study. So that's what we're asking is to find out where this could go and what it could be. So that's basically what we're asking for.
All right, and I believe that, or Lisa, are we on receipt? Okay, so we'll just dispense with that. Any opposed to receipt? All right, that passes. And so the requested action. Okay, Grant and then Grieve. Any further comment? Director Arbor?
Yeah, maybe I think it's a question of scope. If they just scope it to town of Comox, it will kind of solidify like that. So maybe in the requested action, if there could be consideration for staff to say that we provide a letter of support and that the CVRD may like to investigate options around peri-urban areas. Yeah, collaborate on opportunities outside of the town of Comox.
All right, and sorry, is that an amendment, Director Arbor?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we either have to be an amendment or not an amendment. Okay, perhaps it's a suggestion to staff. Do we need an amendment there? Yeah.
The additional request.
I think the letter of support is from the town of Comox's perspective is really about that application for the community, the town of Comox focused community broadband strategy. I'm not speaking for the town of Comox because I don't really know, but I think it is focused in that area. And so if the board passes the resolution as it is, and I think we would focus that that letter in that regard, but that certainly doesn't prevent the Electrical Area Services Committee from further considering this and looking at what type of efforts would be needed to look at some sort of a rural or semi-urban strategy as well. Unless the board wants to adjust the recommendation to propose that more broadband strategy, which I think may complicate the request back to the town of Comox.
All right, and Director Wells, you're not going to speak on this, so then Director Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if we can approve this recommendation for this letter to support this letter and then add a letter asking the town of Comox to consider collaborating with the regional areas in this same strategy. Would that be a way to do this?
If I could, I would actually suggest that be a matter that the Electrical Areas Services Committee consider and bring up, because it's not a small undertaking to take on that kind of work, and we do have work plans in front of us, and we do want to make sure that the suggestion can be well supported, and that we give consideration to what that kind of analysis might be. So I would suggest that maybe the Electrical Area Services Committee to give that consideration separately as opposed to through a resolution here.
Great, and I think that the resolution proposed by Director Grieve would allow for that discussion to happen at the ASC. Next, Director Morin.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing as Director Brown. Thanks.
And Director Arbor.
Okay, I'll just. It's our first painful moment of the year, and so that's okay. It's just for me, and that's maybe the lesson here is that, you know, when somebody comes with a request for support and talks quite a bit in that letter about regional benefit, I wouldn't have this discussion if this was just a support letter for the town of Comox to do community broadband, but their request for support includes a lot of language around regional benefit. And what I'm saying is I'm not seeing that regional benefit scoped out. Right? So we're providing, so it looks good for them that there'll be regional benefit, but we haven't identified those. So that's why for me, I would have utilized that language as an opportunity to say that we'll investigate how there can actually be regional benefit from a CVRD perspective. Small point, but an important one. I think we started the Marine Services building in the past, and we had that discussion around regional benefit, and we were fully in agreement. And I'm just not quite seeing it with this request the way it was phrased to us. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Farber, and alternate Director Wells.
Thanks. I was trying not to talk, but yeah, I think that's like I've got a bunch of challenges, and I think the way the expectations are here and the fact that there's no real time to have a discussion around it, like that February 8th, like it's sort of like just and again, I don't think it was meant to be that way. It's just the way that I think it's coming across from that expectation side of we're going to do this thing for the region, but there hasn't been a discussion to really say, is everybody on board with this prior to the request for this letter? But yeah, that's my challenge. Very similar to Director Arbor, and then more substantially as well, I guess, is just the need for this type of fiber optic connections in a relatively urban area. So,
okay, Director Grant, did you want to respond to that? Okay, so that's discussion on that and the potential of a further resolution by Director Green. So at this point, we're on the requested action. So all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, and that passes unanimously. And I imagine we will do the addendum and then following that. Okay, all right, this is an item of new business. Let's just follow sequentially. So Director Green, did you want to propose a resolution?
As long as it's a standalone, I do think that maybe we should send a letter to Comox suggesting that I mean, but there again, I mean, I think James is right in that this should come through the EASC. So as long as we make a mental note of bring this forward at our next EASC. So this be referred, yeah, this must move this was referred, this be referred back to ESC that we explore options to work together towards broadband connectivity in the Comox Valley. Something as vague as that, because okay.
Okay, so that's a motion to refer to the ESC to explore options to expand broadband connectivity in the Comox Valley. Is that?
Yeah, on a regional basis.
On a regional
work
basis.
together to explore. Yeah.
Lisa, do you want a moment to catch up here?
Because I think we need the discussion going, get it going. Because there's always funding opportunities coming down the line all the time. So we could be ready for it, you know?
So I think staff are identifying the next EASC is after the deadline here, but I think that's probably okay because the submission to the town of Comox, the letter of support will proceed, it'll go forward. The topic itself will be at the next EASC to have further discussion at the EA level. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Arbor.
And further, why I'm not worried about the timing in a way, like it would have been nice to get those discussions, but it's ICE-T, one of the most flexible organizations out there, supported by local governments, and I think that we'll be able to catch up to the thread. Thanks.
All right, so we have. Thanks for capturing all this, Lisa. So we have the resolution up on the screen. Just a second. Director Greaves, is that to capture what you were wanting?
How about refer the ESC for discussion to explore regional options?
So just moving region from the end to the beginning then. Okay, and Director Arby, your second still stands, given the change in wording. Okay, so that's on the table. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? And Jonathan, we can't see you, so just tell us if you're not in favor. Good, we can see you again. Perfect. Okay. All right, and next on new business is an item regarding thank you. Move the addendum be considered. We need a majority vote on that, so that we'll just take that vote now. All those in favor of consideration of the addendum? Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, and so this is an addendum coming sort of in response to discussion in the community and requests from directors here that concerning the current labor dispute, which impacts transit service in the Comox Valley, impacts the entire community, users, drivers, and also other members who are impacted as they try to assist people. We've received. Thank you very much. And I guess we'll take a vote on receipt now. Any opposed? I'm sorry, we have a comment by Director William.
Thanks, Chair. And first of all, my appreciation for bringing this forward to the agenda. There's a lot of impact on transit riders. And in some ways, it's a good demonstration of how our community is becoming more and more dependent on transit. I'm hearing about it particularly in relation to students at North Island College and also the employers that rely on many of those students to run their businesses. So I don't know whether there's been talk in the media about the possibility that this could be a long strike. And I think we want to go on record as soon as possible, expressing our concern and asking for some intervention on the province's part to hopefully get the parties back to the table and bring about a resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Hillian. That's exactly what this resolution seeks to do, both those things, both to acknowledge the concerns throughout the community and to ask the province to work with the parties to facilitate a conclusion as quickly as possible. I'll go to Director Arbour next.
Thanks, and I'm glad this was brought forward. I think the requested action doesn't quite go far enough for me. And so you've spoken about North Island College and the employers, but in the rural areas, this is also critical linkages coming either from Black Creek or from Fanny Bay and Union Bay. And so this is affecting everybody. It's now been 1 month in the strike. We're encouraged. I think it's easy to duck for us as a board because we're not directly liable for that negotiation. But I also believe that's a problem. So we're responsible for contributing 50% of the cost of this service, and we're not involved in the negotiation. A few years ago, we had the same problem with garbage. And as you recall, 2 years ago, I suggested that maybe we wanted to bring garbage in as a public service under basically our corporate structure. Right now, we have a system, and I'm seeing it with Coast Bus as well. Somewhere else in the province is having the same issue, where TransLink has also put, it's not even BC Transit, they've put it at arm's length. So we're like third arm's length, and we provide 50% of the budget through our residents, and we're getting zero service. I think there has to be a consideration of our duty as elected official to represent our residents and their money and to ensure we have the services. And right now, with the structure we have contributed to establish, we've cut ourselves out of the deal. We have zero influence in those negotiations, and to me, that's wrong. So I would like, as item C, that at strategic planning, we have a conversation both for garbage and for transit around the current structure of those services and how we deliver them, and the privatization of those services and at what cost. Thank you.
All right, and Director Wells, alternate Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'm going to really appreciate Director Arbour's comments and support them. This strike is something that causes people to lose trust and confidence in a system that we are really trying to move forward. I know back in September, I brought up with our council members the challenge that job action was happening at that point. It wasn't a strike, but a significant amount of routes were being canceled on a daily basis. So this is not something, I mean, the strike is certainly a very acute thing that is abrupt, but this has been meandering along for quite some time. And I, you know, as at the city, I can say I've had no communication from BC Transit around this. And I get that as you guys are 3 steps back, I'm even one more removed as mayor at the city of Courtenay, which makes it even more problematic. And so a couple things that I would like to see amended or at least have up for discussion. One would be better communication during these times to elected officials specifically, because that I've found out about all of these things actually because my kids go to school. I haven't heard anything from BC Transit. It's all come from other sources. And so to really get a better source of communication to the elected officials, because this is, and it's not just affecting our community, Campbell River, and there's other issues in other communities across the province as well. So that would be one thing. And I'm not sure if this is, I think this is an appropriate place to put it since we're sending this letter. The second thing would be to call for a meeting as well, so that we can actually have BC Transit come and speak to this, and you know, that might be an in-camera meeting, but to have them come and have a discussion, just so that there, you know, as much information could be shared as quick as possible. So I think sometimes a letter being sent is good, but having that face-to-face where you're looking people in the eye can have a distinct a higher impact. And given the fact that we're a long way away from a UBCM or some other kinds of meetings, that requesting that meeting sooner rather than later, I think would be a good idea. So those would be my 2 recommendations. I'm happy to make those amendments when we get to that point, but that's it.
Great, thanks, Director Wells. We're on receipt currently, but when we do get to that point, and next will be Director Arbour.
Sorry, yeah, no, I just wanted to, I really agree with the additional points that Alternate Director Wells made. I think that especially, and I think it's the 2 things. For me, it lessens my confidence. We're talking about major potential investment with BC Transit. We're looking at potential electrification of the fleet and all that. And if we don't have confidence in and feeling like sitting ducks when our residents are not getting service because we're outside the scope of any influence on the operations, that's problematic, and it chips away at my confidence in the long-term future and success of the service. So I just wanted to say that I appreciated that Director Wells said we should have a much more active discussion with them. So thanks.
And Director Morin.
Thanks, Chair. I know it's pretty clear in the proposed recommendation where this letter is going. I just want to, I guess, provide more clarification around, I wouldn't want it to be construed that that there's any issue with the folks who are on strike. And I say that because I've actually had people impacted by the transit strike who really love their bus drivers. And so I just would want to make sure that the intent and the spirit of this is, you know, not taking sides per se, but and making sure that yeah, it's a difficult situation for everybody, including the people who are off work and take pride in their jobs delivering transit locally. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that note, Director Morin. And Director Hardy.
I thought Director was up. Just wondering again if we should reach out to our MLAs with a letter and maybe reach out to the appropriate ministers in regards to the concerns that we have here. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, thanks, Director. Actually, by practice, when we address correspondence to ministers, we copy our local MLAs as a matter of practice. So thanks for that. We'll certainly do that.
All right, and Director Wells, alternate Director Wells, are you wanting to move? We're still on receipt. Okay, yep, go for it.
Yeah, no, it just dawned on me, because I've been speaking with our counterparts up in Campbell River, that it might be good also to include them in this correspondence, or even for yourself to reach out to the chair up there and just let them know this is happening. We don't want a letter to come out that kind of speaks in one thing. And I know that they're also very interested in getting something out there in terms of addressing this. So
good suggestion. Thank you. And Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Just a procedural suggestion. There's been several suggestions of possible amendments, and I think it makes sense to let this resolution stand on its own. And if there's other actions that the board wants to take, make that subject of a separate resolution. There's no need to send BC Transit and the province a letter telling them all sorts of other things apart from this. But I think if we want to do meetings, if we want to, do something that gets us more engaged in the process, that's the subject of a separate resolution. Thanks.
All right, so we're on receipt, and we'll maybe just dispense with that. Any opposed to receipt? Seeing none. So so that'd be the recommendation as it appears on the screen. It's okay, that's been moved and seconded. And Director Wells.
oh, what's that? And furthermore? Yeah, so I certainly see including our partners to the north as part of this, making sure, I kind of get what Director Hillian's saying about having two separate potential motions. Whether that's a furthermore or another motion doesn't really make a difference to me. So just because I've got the mic right now, I'm going to say let's do a furthermore that that we request that BC Transit increase their communication with us when it comes to transit, as well as set up a meeting with them as soon as possible. And then finally, that we include our partners to the north in that communication, or in all of this communication. I don't know if I articulated that in a very good way, but.
And that's the SRD then? Like,
yeah, sorry, yeah.
Just for clarity.
Yeah.
And also the city of Campbell River, is that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how they've got it set up there, if it's the regional district or the city. So that's why I'm being a little bit more generic.
Good advice on who would be the appropriate.
Yeah, it's pretty sure. Yeah. Okay.
And Lisa, you've been capturing that as we're moving along. All right, and next is.
I haven't heard.
That's an amendment, yeah. So Director Morin has her light on, so we'll see. Are you wanting to second? I'm not seeing a seconder, perhaps. Okay, thanks, Director Brown. Okay, so that's on the floor, and Director Morin.
Yeah, my comment was that I would support CCing to the SRD. So that's just a very simple CC so that they're in the loop, but I don't support the other stuff being in a resolution. I think it should be separate. Thanks.
All right, any further comments, Director Carr, anything from you? It was Director Brown who seconded. Okay, not hearing any comments from Director Carr, so that's been moved and seconded, and as amended, it is on the screen. So with the A through E, and all those in favor?
The amendment to add CD would be to add CD and E, that's the amendment.
Okay, sorry, voting on the amendment. Yes, so currently voting on the amendment to add C, D, and E. That was moved by alternate Director Wells and seconded by Director Brown. And so all those in favor of adding C, D, and E as an amendment? Okay, I see 2 in favor. Director Kerr, you're also in favor. So 3 in favor. And Director Arbor is also in favor. Is anyone else in favor? And all those opposed? Okay. The amendment is defeated, so we're back to the original motion, which is item A and B, by Director Grieve and seconded by alternate Director Wells. So we'll vote on that. All those in favor of the resolution? Okay, and sorry, Director Wells, you wanted to speak.
Well, I was going to say,
Mr. Matt
should we
before.
put the last one in there? If that one seemed to make good sense, the one about CCing the city of Canberra, or is that all going to be in a separate motion? So the amendment failed, so now we're voting on the thing unamended.
So the unamended motion, which is just as it appeared in the staff report, is what's on the table right now, and Director Arbor. Okay, Director Grieve.
Yeah, being that it's,
Sorry.
being that we're talking about CCing a letter, does that need an actual formal motion to CC Campbell River? Can we make a direction to staff to CC them on this letter?
Yeah, the letter itself would be a public record. It would be a public document. So
Mhm.
in terms of CCing them, I would work with the chair to confirm that would be fine to do. The previous, the defeated amendment, I believe, was to include
Transit.
other parties more
Yeah.
substantially, but I would
Okay.
work with the chair on that correspondence, and it's a public record, so.
I certainly don't have any concerns with that. So like we could take that as read. All right. So sorry, it's been quite a journey with this resolution. That we have voted on the resolution on the screen. Is that correct, Lisa?
Did we complete it?
Okay, I think we've.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's carried, and yep, supplementary motion, Director Arbor.
Procedural question, is it inappropriate to bring back some of the items, I guess, in the new motion? Totally fine. Okay, so can we see them on the screen again? Because I've been waiting because I had another one as well. So I'd move that we request improved communication between BC Transit and elected official in regards to the strike, that we include Campbell River in that communication. And I would move that we refer this entire matter to our strategic planning session in June for a discussion on the structure and governance of this service.
Staff, do we need to have the piece including Campbell River and
Oh,
communication?
in the meeting? Sorry, did I miss the meeting?
The meeting's not there.
In the meeting, yeah. In the meeting, sorry, I missed one.
I'll second that.
Yeah, it may be redundant, but that's not a problem. And was there the additional piece for the meeting with BC Transit? Exactly. Who is communicating? All right, so we're seeing the sausage being made live on YouTube. And we've removed the redundant piece regarding, oh no, we still got. Where's improvement? Oh, the meeting is gone again. Yeah.
We'll, with these notes, we'll be able to draft that resolution based on what the board's been discussing. I don't know that it will look exactly like what you see on the screen, but we'll put that into the minutes.
All right, so there's been number of revisions since this, I think, was initially proposed by Director Arbor. Is this your, okay, and Director Helene, you're still seconding this as we see the final wording? Okay, and you see you're up your light on, so I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just simply, there's a number of elements here that are a little more complex and I think are worthy of a separate actual resolution. And that's the only reason I suggested that it was better to make a separate resolution. You know, it gives us an opportunity to discuss this in a little more detail, and whereas the previous resolution was really just about registering the concern and calling for support to the parties to resolve the strike. This is about the bigger picture. And I think Director Arbor's discussion or suggestion that we discuss this further at strategic planning is a good one. So happy to support this. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Director Helene, and now Director Moore.
Great, thank you, Chair. I guess I'd like a bit more clarification around, I think Director Grant mentioned this, around what this meeting would be about. And I guess I'm wondering about the order of these things, because I almost see that having the discussion and strategic planning and getting us all kind of on the same page and getting a sense of what the issues are and what we want to discuss might be better before meeting with BC Transit, so that we have all that clear. And I think if the idea is to meet with them kind of around this strike action, and the conditions or the things that, if it's around that, I highly doubt that BC Transit would be having that kind of conversation with us. So I guess I want some clarification on what this meeting would be about. And if it is around improving communication and, more of a broader conversation, I think that might be better to come after we've had that fulsome discussion and strategic planning.
If I can, I might suggest that this particular motion be put into two. And if I understand the board's interest, it's about requesting an improvement to communication with BC Transit and having a meeting in that regard. Being very mindful that neither BC Transit nor the CVRD are involved in this labor dispute at all. So it would really be about information sharing. I think that would probably be the first resolution here. And then secondly, if there's an interest by the board to talk about the transit service at strategic planning, then that would be something you would do. And I would suggest maybe that be a separate resolution focused around the strategic planning discussion, just to clarify the two and pull them apart. So if that's of interest with the board, then Mr. Chair, procedurally, you could separate the resolution, I believe, looking at Jake and Lisa and seeing nods. So you could separate that resolution into those two different topic areas if that's of interest.
I'm seeing some nods around the table regarding severance, and that certainly makes sense. Lisa, would you be able to do that, please?
Everybody wants to see technique.
All right, thanks for your assistance, Lisa. So we have now two motions in front of us. The first is to request improved communication with BC Transit and elected officials, include Campbell River in communication, and request a meeting with BC Transit. We're gonna remove that and perfect. And that's on the table. Are any further comments before we vote? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Great, and that passes unanimously. And the second motion that this matter be referred to strategic planning in June. Okay, that's moved and seconded now. And any commentary on that? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Great, okay. That took a little while, but that was worth doing. Thanks everyone for taking the time. This is obviously, it's a very immediate thing. And I think we've managed to respond pretty effectively in a really short period of time. And well, there's actually one more piece of new business, which is that staff and I met with the Chief and Council of Comox First Nation and their staff on December 14th, and it was a really positive discussion. And the sort of outcome of that is we'll be moving back towards monthly meetings. That's the standard practice we'd had before, and that seemed to be well received by everyone in the room. And the idea being that we try to focus on specific projects, one for each meeting, rather than updating on all matters at once. And after that, I had a coffee meeting with Chief Councillor Price, and suggested, given sort of the long history of some of these projects, like the South Sewer, asking if it'd be useful for us to put together for KFN just a sort of a binder containing all the documents throughout the long history, which are sort of tabbed and organized and indexed. And he indicated an interest in receiving that, and staff are in the process of putting that together, just to sort of make sure that we're keeping the information that's available on these long-term projects well shared. So I think that's an encouraging step. It's good to be back to monthly meetings, and just wanted to report back in from that meeting last month in December. And at this point, then we will I'll entertain Director Greaves' motion. All right, so we're going to move in camera. And we don't need